Hey, I'm Pat, and in this video we'll be going over tables and everything that uh, you need to know to use tables in your scripts. So firstly, we'll go ahead and discuss what a table is first, right? So a table is a data type similar to how strings and numbers are also data types, but what a table does is it can actually store multiple values, so basically it can have multiple variables inside of one variable, basically. So a table technically isn't really like a variable. It's stored inside of a variable because it's a data type. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make a table, right? So a table is defined by using these curly braces like this. So once you use these, Studio knows that you're trying to create a table, right? So everything inside of here will be inside of the table. Now, the table is kind of like a list in the way that you list all the values that you want to have inside the table. So, say if we want to make a table full of some numbers, right? So we'll do 12, and then we use a comma to separate the values, like this, 15, 24, 2, whatever, right? So we have a table of all these numbers, and they're all separated by commas. So that's table. And one thing to take note is this is in numerical order, kind of. So a table has indexes, and that's the way that you would access all these values inside this table. So an index is just a number, and basically it's the values position inside the table. So 12's index would be 1, 13's index would be 2, 15's index would be 3, 24's would be 4, and 2's would be 5. So it starts at 1 and it goes up depending on how many indexes there are. So in order to say we want to print the third index in the table, we can do table, so we'll have a print, and inside what we'll do is we type our table's name, right? And then we use these square brackets. And these square brackets pretty much say that we are trying to index this table. And then we just put 3 because we're trying to get the third index. So the number inside of here will be the index of the value. So now I'm going to go ahead and get our output. And if we run this, we will see we get 15 in the output. That is because 1, 2, 3, 15 is the third index, right? So that's pretty cool. We can store multiple values inside one table. It's very useful if you want to, instead of making 20 different variables, say if like you have multiple variables to store similar data, like you want to store like data for a tool like damage, attack speed, whatever. You can all store all that inside a table, and then you can easily access it through a table instead of having 200 different variables or whatever, right? The next thing you would need that we can go over is a for loop for a table. So you can actually loop through a table and iterate through each index in the table. So if you remember in the last video, we went over for loops, while loops, all that stuff. Technically, you can use a while loop or repeat until loop to loop through a table, but really that's just kind of ugly. It's not really what the loops are meant for. For loops are meant for looping through tables, pretty much. They're built for that. So you might remember we make a for loop and we have one control variable that we define, and then we have some commas, and we kind of make our condition, etc. But when we're looping through a table, there's a much different way that we do it, and I'll explain it all in a second. But we do for iv in I pairs, and then we do our table name inside the I pairs, and then we just put do. So what does this mean, right? So we're creating two control variables up here. We have I and v. So I is actually the index. So the first control variable here is the index, and then the second one is value. These can actually be named whatever you want, similar to how like your control variable in your other for loop would have whatever name you want it to. And then we do in I pairs, and I pairs is just like a function that Lua has, for helping us loop through tables basically. And then we put do, and inside here would be whatever we want to do. So this for loop will iterate over the entire table, so it will last for as long as the table is the table's length, right? An index will be obviously the current index that's on inside the table, and then value would be the current value. So if we want to print more of like give you more of a visual as to what really is going on here. See, we're going to print the index and the value of each value inside the table, each index. So if we run this, you'll see it runs 5 times. That's because we have 5 values in our table. And you see index would be the index of the value, and then value would be the value, right? So prints 1, 12, 2, 13, 3, 15, 4, 24, 5, 2. So now say we want to do something like get the sum of all the numbers inside this table. Well, we can make a variable sum outside of our for loop, and what we can do is we can take our sum and we can increase it by each value in the table by looping through the values and increasing it each time, right? So now what it's going to do is each iteration is going to take the value in the for loop and it's going to add it on to the value inside a sum. So it's going to go 12 plus 0, 12, and 13 plus 12 would be 25. And then it'll be 25 plus 15, which is 40, right? You kind of get the idea. So what we'll do is we'll print sum just to show you kind of what happens. So we'll click run. And you see we get the sum of 66. So it gave us the sum of all the numbers in there. Now, you can actually do a pairs loop and you can do an I pairs loop. Now, I pairs is not actually something that we really need to know about for now. It's not useful for tables at all. I pairs is much more efficient for looping through tables. It also loops through it in order. With I pairs, it won't loop through the table in order. So it will loop through it in kind of like a random order. But I pairs will loop through it based off its index kind of in order like. And it's more efficient to use I pairs for tables. So that's that. There's also a newer way to do for loops with tables using like the next keyword or something. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know how to do that. I don't care too much about it. This way has always worked for me. It's still like a way that a lot of people use it, and I recommend this way because I don't know, it's just kind of comfortable for me. So what I use, but you can do it however. I'm just not going over that in this video. So the next thing I want to go over is a library. So every language when programming has libraries usually, and in Lua they're all kind of built in so you can easily access them. You don't need to do anything at the top like import the library name or anything like that. You can just access it like it's a global. So what a library is it's basically it's a library and it stores a bunch of different functions that can be used, right? So it has a bunch of built-in functions that we can use, and one of the libraries is table. So we can use table library to do all kinds of things with tables. So I'm actually just going to get rid of this for loop for now. But inside this with table, what we can do is we can you can see all these are the functions inside a table. Ton of functions. It's like unlimited. If you really want, you can go to developer.roblox.com and it will have all the functions and you can look at and see what each function does. But for now, what we're going to go over is find, remove, and insert. So what does insert do? You can see once you go inside the parentheses after typing it, it actually gives you kind of a rundown up top here. So you can see right here it says insert and then T. So T would be the table. And then you have a comma, so it tells you the different arguments it'll take. So the first one would be a table, and then the second one would be a value. So that would be the value that you're inserting into the table, right? And if that's all you do, it will add the value that it's given at the end of the table. And then you can see we can hit these little arrows up top here, and you can see there's a third argument that we can actually use, a different way that we can do this. So if we give it 3 arguments, the second argument will actually be the position that you're inserting the value at. So you can choose which position in the table that you want to insert the value at. For now, what we're just going to do is we're going to take our table and we're going to add 43 onto the end of it. And now what we can do is we can print our table. Now you can't actually print a table like this. I'll show you how you can actually see the table in a second. So you can see once it prints it out, it shows us everything, and you can see 43 was added onto the end of the table after 2, which is our index, right? Now there is a good chance that it won't look like this. What you want to do is, I think it's log mode, or it's show memory expandable tables. It's one of these. You have to turn one of them off, I think. Or no, I think it's this one. It might be show tables expand by default. I think it is this one. But you turn that on and it'll show you, you know, the tables. Actually, no, that might be wrong. Whatever. It's one of these funking checkbox things, okay? You'll figure it out. I believe in you. You got a big brain. You're a human being, okay? I don't want to discuss this, but if you don't have the right thing checked off, it'll probably print out some weird characters like 0x and then some numbers or something like that. A whole bunch of numbers and letters. What that actually is, it is actually the memory address of the table. You probably have no idea what that means. It's not important, but basically you want to change your settings so that way you can actually see the table once you print it out. Otherwise, you have to make like a for loop to print through the table and print each value, which is just kind of annoying. The next thing I want to go over is table.remove. So what does remove do is you give it the table that you want to remove, and then you give it the position of the value you want to remove, or the index, right? So say we want to remove the first index in our table, we want to remove 12, we can give it 1, which would be the first index, and once we run this, you'll see that 12 is no longer in the table, but 13 is now at index 1. So what you see is the table will actually shrink to fill in any gaps that happen after you use table.remove, right? So if we remove the first index, then the second index will move down and fill in the gap, and all the other ones will do the same, basically shortening the table by 1 index whenever you use remove, right? And next one, say if we want to remove like a specific value from a table, right? We want to find a value inside a table and we want to remove it, or we just want to check to see if that value is inside the table. We'll use table.find. Now up here it's kind of confusing. It's like haystack, needle, and unless you know what like the phrase finding a needle in a haystack is, you probably have no idea what the hell it's talking about. But haystack really is just a table. Needle is the value you are looking for. So say we want to search the table and we want to find 24. I'm gonna actually copy this and I'm gonna put it all inside of a print. So table.find will actually return the index of the value. So if it doesn't find the value in the table, it will return nil. But if it does find it, it will return the index that the value is at, the first index. So if there's 2 occurrences of 24, it'll return the first one, the closest one to 1, right? So if we do this, you can see it prints 3. And now if we look down here, we can see 24 is at the 3rd index in our table. Now say if we give it something that's not on the table, like 28, run it, what it will do is it will give us a nil. So we can actually use that to our advantage for something like an if statement. So if we wanted to check if something's inside a table, we can use table.find table, and we can check for a value. Now the reason this works is because table.find will return nil if the value is not in the table, and any other time it will return a number. So if you remember, from our if statement video, nil will always be the equivalent to false, right? So if it's nil, then the condition will end up being false, but if it's anything else, the condition will be true, and it will print our 13 is in the table. So if we run this, you'll see that it will work. 13 is in the table, it tells us. Alright, now say you want to remove 13 from the table. We can do, and we don't know 13's index. Say we don't know it, and we want to remove it from the table. What we can do is we can use table.find inside of here, and we can do 13. Now you can also store this separately in the variable. Make a variable called 13's index. Oh yeah, you can't. Can I? There we go. This is terrible variable naming practice. Please don't do this, but it's just for a display basically. So it returns the index and we store that in a variable, and then we use that index to remove it from the table. So now if we hit run, I hit the wrong button I think, but you'll see 13 is no longer inside our table, which is what we wanted. The last thing I want to do is show you that we can actually print, or we can actually get the length of a table by using the little hashtag keyword. This also works on strings. You can get the length of a string by doing this. I'll also put a string in here for example. So you can see we can get the length of a string and the length of the table by using the little hashtag word. So 5 and 3. So if we wanted to check to see if a table has data inside of it, we can check to make sure its length is greater than 0, or we wanted to check the length of a table, we can just use the hashtag to get the length. So now what we can do is, say we have like a table full of numbers, we can add like a few, right? Now say I didn't honestly come up with a very good prompt or like something for you to script in this video, but basically I'll go ahead and like make it kind of advanced, but it's gonna be kind of a repeat of something you've already done, but it's okay. What I want you to do is make a function, and inside this function we will take a table and the table of numbers, right? So we'll take a table inside our function through the parameter list, and what we'll do is we'll loop through the table and we will remove any odd numbers from the table, and then we will return the new table that does not have any more odd numbers in it, right? And I'll give you a few seconds and then I'll go ahead and do it, so you can pause the video. So now I'm gonna go ahead and go over how I would do this. So what we'll do is we'll make a function. What in bloody world? What? I'm gonna be honest, I don't know this, but gone now. The scary red line's gone. We're okay. So what we're going to call this is just remove odds and we'll take in one parameter called tab, which will just be the table that we're taking. And what we'll do is we'll make a for loop and we'll loop through the table with I pairs, right? Just like we learned in the video. And now what we'll do is we'll check to see if the value is odd or even. So if v mod 2 equals 0, if you remember, this is how we check to see if it's even or not. And oh wait, what we'll do is we'll do not. So if it is not a even number, right, what we are doing is we're checking to see if it's not an even number, and if it is, then we will take our table, or we'll do table.remove, and we take our table, and then we use the current index because we got I here as the index, v is the value, so we take the value mod 2 to see if it's even or not, and then we remove using the I because I is the index, and then all we gotta do is we just gotta return table at the end here, outside of the for loop. Of course, you don't want to return inside the for loop because that will cause the function to end before the for loop finishes, which is not what you want, right? So now all we gotta do is we can just make a print where we call our function and we pass it our table that we have, and we'll see what we get in the output. So we run it and we got an error because I'm stupid. Alright, we'll try this again. There we go. Look at that, I'm a genius. Except for the fact that it didn't take out all the odd numbers. Look at that. We still got 15 and we still got 33 in here. Is that all of them though? 13, 15, I think those are the only 33. Alright, so it did take out 13 though. Alright. I don't know what's wrong. What the hell is this? Okay. I am like losing my mind right now. I am sorry. Alright, so let me try and figure out what is happening. So, you know what? I'm not even going to try and figure it out. I'm just going to do this a different way. So, what we'll do is we'll make a new table. And we'll make it empty. And what we'll do is we'll check to see if our value is even. And if it is, then we'll just add it to our new table. So add it to our new table and then give it the value that we're adding to the table, table.insert, right? Now what we'll return is the new table. Now this should work because I'm a genius, guys. Look at that. I'm just too smart, right? What did I tell you? I don't know why the other method wasn't working right. It's just kind of weird like that, but I mean, this works, right? It's kind of a different way of doing it. It's kind of a little bit more straining on memory usage because we make another variable, but it's not crazy important. Anyways, that's pretty much all I wanted to go over for this video. Oh wait, I wanted to go over the continue keyword. We can do that. So, what does continue do? So, continue is like basically what it says. It says continue. It just continues in the loop. So it's kind of like break, but it only works for the current iteration. So, say if we wanted to get rid of this indentation here with our if statement because we only want the code inside here to run if this condition works, we can check to see the opposite, right? So if it's not even, then we can use continue, and what continue will do is it'll skip over the rest of the code inside this iteration and it'll just move on to the next iteration and it'll check again. Now if this doesn't make sense to you, it's not too important. It's really only like useful for cleaning your code, making it look a little bit neater, right? But this is just a one-line if statement, which we can do. We don't need like multiple lines, right? And we just check to make sure it's not even, and if it isn't even, then we just skip it over, and if it is even, then all this doesn't do anything, and then we just run this code, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Doesn't, it's not too important. But yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.